Daredevil Born Again. Lawyer by day, horny vigilante by night. Daredevil Born Again is the long-awaited fourth season to the Netflix's Daredevil. Well, it kinda is. They're being super vague about what actually is canon and what isn't. And I think it's probably to mitigate spoilers that could come out, or it's just so they can kind of do whatever they want and then say like, oh, it isn't canon if they like mess something up. Me personally, I wish they'd just make the whole thing canon. And yes, that does include the hand stuff. I know it's not that good. I don't really care. While making this guy, I actually rewatched Netflix's Daredevil. It only really took me season 1 to make the whole thing, but I still watched the rest of it. I watched season 3 in one sitting. I'm not proud of it, but it's so good. If you haven't seen it, you should. I don't care if you're 8 years old. This is peak TV we're talking about. You have to watch it. I actually did make this Daredevil a few years ago, back from season 2, and his Devil of Hell's kitchen suit. Yeah, it's alright, but I could definitely make a better one based on a new MCU suit. Also, here's my custom designed Daredevil I made, like, a year ago now. Because where else am I gonna put it? My Instagram? Conveniently in the bio with a video, because it's the easiest way to send me the Daredevil that you may have made based off this video? Yes, I can. So for the body. Funny story, I've already got one. So I'm not remaking it. What the hell, I'll remake the body. But not the head! No, I'll do the head. First, I cut out the body. I start by sewing the torso. I sew 4 sides, leaving the bottom open. This is so I can stuff it. Then I sew it up. I move lower to the legs. I sew the 3 sides of the legs in a U shape. Then I stuff the legs. I sew them to the body. Next is the arms. I sew the arms in a U shape like the legs. Then I stuff those and sew them to the body, connecting them with the shoulder where the arm would be. I cut out the pieces for the pecs. Then I sew them on and stuff them. Now I can work on the head. Firstly, I cut out these 2 pieces, then sew the triangles together. Next, I put in the eyes. Then, using black thread, I make the mouth. Then I sew the pieces together. Now I stuff it. With the base of the head done, I draw on the eyebrows. Now I move up to the hair. This is the same as the head, but brown. You can choose to make his hair whichever version of his hair you'd like, considering how nice it was in season 1 to now with the brutal recession of his hairline. I make it the same as the one I have. This is as simple as cutting out one piece of felt in the shape you'd like and sewing it to the top of his head, similar to Wolverine. Then you can sew the head to the body. That's it for the body. Now onto the suit. I'm actually very excited not to be making a suit with muted, sad colors. I actually get to have something vibrant. I start out the same as everything else I make, at the bottom. I cut out this simple cutout for the boots. Then I sew the sides top down. Then I sew the bottom of the boot together. I flip the boots inside out and put them on. This time with the seam in front, like a slut. I cut out the pants part. Now I'm about to overcomplicate the pants and sleeve for sake of preference. If you want, you can just ignore all my instructions and make a simple one-cut sleeve without any added seams and such. Same with the pants. The fabric I'm using has this nice texture on it, which looks similar to the suit used in the show, in my personal opinion. I sew the pieces together. First, the top 2. Then I sew down the side of the bottom piece. I tie it off, but before cutting the thread, I sew it to the rest of the pants. Make sure the seams connect on both sides. Then I take all of that off. I sew each leg together at the crotch. Here's the finished pants. I put the pants on inside out and sew them to the boots. Then I flip them up so it looks all nice and proper. Then I keep moving up. I give the torso a black base. I sew both sides, leaving holes for the arms to slip through. Then I sew it to the pants. I fold it up. I folded up the body to put the arms through. Now the sleeves. Firstly, I cut out these pieces for the wrists. Then I sew the sides of them together. Then I flip it inside out and put it on the arm. This is so I can get reference for how I should make the rest of the sleeve. Next, I cut this piece out. This will be the bicep to the shoulder. I cut this out very precisely to make sure it lines up with the rest of the arm. I then sew up the side of it. This seam will run along the front of the bicep. I then sew the wrist to the bicep. Next is the shoulder. This is in 2 pieces, so it fits around the shoulder nicely. I next sew the shoulder piece very carefully to the costume. Now for the gloves. The glove is a simple cut, being folded in half and sewn together. Next I sew the glove to the sleeve of the suit, making sure to sew it under the sleeve. With that attached, that's all for the base of the costume. Now for detailing. First, I grab this Sharpie and draw all the black lines on the suit. You can use a fine liner Sharpie or some kind of fine liner fabric marker. If you'd like to make sure they don't fade, you could paint the lines on with black fabric paint, and a pin or needle. I'll probably do that later, but for now I'm using a black marker. Starting at the boots, I cut out the soles of the boots. I sew them to the bottoms. Next, I cut out the shin armor. I sew the back of it to the back of the ankle and try to wrap it around as far as I can to the front. Then I sew on the shin armor on the front. Next are the knee pads. I cut them out, then sew them on. I need to paint them, but don't want to yet, so I move on to the arms. The detailing on the arm is mostly already done with the base. First, I cut out the gauntlets. These are just large wristbands. Then I sew the sides, flip them inside out, and slide them on so the seam is cleaner. I then cut out these hand and armor pieces. Then I sew them on. Finally, I cut out these black bands and sew them onto the gauntlets, while at the same time sewing them to the costume itself. That's it for the detailings on the arms and legs. Now since it's 2 AM, I'm going to paint this and go to bed. Here's how it looks painted. Like a fool, I was in fact not done detailing the legs. There's these black strips that go across the sides of the waist. I sew those on. Then I cut out the crotch zipper and sew it on. Now the pants are done. I'm lying, but we'll get back to that. Moving up to the torso, I start by cutting out the T-shape on the back of his suit. Then I sew it on. Next is the U-shape that'll go around his neck. I sew it on. I do this so the collar fits better and is more accurate to the reference. Next, I cut out this U-shape of felt. Given what I do in like the next step, this part is completely pointless and I deeply encourage you not to even bother. I cut out the red pec pieces. Once attached, I use the black Sharpie to draw 2 black lines close together running along the bottom of the pecs. Next, the step that makes the black hue irrelevant. I use a red Sharpie to draw these lines on the pecs. This gives the subtle bit of fake definition that he has on his pecs that he actually has on the suit. Staying in the upper torso area, I cut out the collar piece. Then sew it on the end so it stays folded. Then I sew it to the costume and flip it up. Then I cut out this small square for the front neck piece. Then I sew it to the suit. Next I cut out the collarbone piece? I'm not sure what to call it. I sew it to the suit. There's these thin shoulder pieces that I cut out and sew onto the suit. Lastly, I sew this piece onto the black back area of the suit. Then I move under the pecs to the pectoral minors, as it says they're called online. I sew this to the suit, then fold it down and sew it down. Then there are these side pieces that wrap around to the back of the body. I sew them to the suit, similar to the minors. Next, I cut out these 6 pieces, which will be divided amongst both sides. I sew the tall red piece on first, making sure it's close to the piece on the back. Then I sew the rectangle over top of it. Lastly, I sew the black piece to cover up any messier bits. Next is the belt. I sew the red piece to the black part of the belt. Once sewn together, I slide it up the body. Then I sew over the seams of the belt to attach it to the rest of the suit. Next, I cut out this plate-like piece to the back of his belt, so it will stay on the costume, keeping up the belt. Lastly, for the sewing, I cut out the abs and sew them on. I time-lapse this one because I don't want to mess it up the way that I hold the phone while recording. When all the sewing detailing is done, I paint the suit. With it painted, now I just need to wait for it to dry. Now that he's dry, I get to work on the mask. First is the helmet cutout. I cut out these 3 pieces that I'll wrap around the top of his head. I sew the pieces together. That's all it takes for the base. Next, I cut out the black fabric part of the mask. I'm making this one cut because it's hard to find where the seams are on the reference images I have. I sew it so it fits to the head, then put it on. Then I slide the helmet on top of the head. Then I sew it to the mask. I time-lapse this part because I want the mouthpiece to line up with the helmet. Once attached, I cut out this piece for the nose. Then I sew it on. Then, right beside the nose, I cut out the pieces for the eyes. Then I sew them on. Now for the actual eyes. I experiment a bit with white, but don't really like it. I want to kind of imitate the way it looks when he's got the red eye contacts in, which I didn't realize were contacts. I thought they were just painted over top, which I guess is kind of dumb of me to think that. So I draw a red dot on with some Sharpie to see if it looks better, but it's still a no. Then I just do a simple red dot, which I still don't like. I settle for less and finally decide on the same white cut, but in red. I sew those on. Then I cut out the horns. It's simple, only being 2 pieces. I sew them together, then I stuff them. I sew the finished horns to the helmet. I go back down to the eyes afterwards with the eyebrows. I sew those on. Then I bust out this black paint and paint the black lines on the helmet. Now with it finished, I just have to wait for it to dry. But that's pretty much it for the suit. Now onto the finishing touches. For the sticks, I grabbed this pack of skinny wooden sticks I picked up from the dollar store. This is the same method I used when I made my own custom Daredevil. First, I grabbed this stick. I got them at the dollar store. I measure them to the hands to try and get it the same size as the ones in the show. I mark it with a Sharpie, then cut it out. I tried using an X-Acto knife, but that doesn't really cut well, so I whittled it down using scissors till I could snap it off. It leaves a bit of broken wood on the end, so I cut off a piece of sandpaper to try and flatten it. This takes a while, but it's worth it. Even if you have a tool that will cut straight through it, I would still recommend sanding it. Once I'm done sanding, I put a pause on the sticks. I cut out this rectangle for the holster. Then I cut out this piece and sew it on. I make sure to use the sticks to line up how I should be sewing it so they fit. Once it's sewn on, I cut out this piece and sew it on, which I put at the bottom to hold the sticks in place, even more like on the actual suit. Now that the holster is done, I cut out the straps for it to go around his leg. I sew the strap on the leg, then before cutting the thread, use it to also attach the holster to the leg. With that on the leg, I then take this fine liner Sharpie and lightly color the edges black. Then I remove the sticks from the holster. I use this metallic silver paint to paint over the buckles and the straps. I set that aside to dry, then whip out the stuff I'll need to paint the sticks. I use the pipe cleaner to wrap around the sticks to hold them while I wait for them to dry. Then I paint them red. Once painted, I wait for them to dry. Then I take them out and turn them around so I can paint the black tips on. With everything dried, I put the sticks back in the holsters. And that's it. Daredevil's done. I guess I can add him to my MCU characters collection now. There's no way I'm going to set that up again, so he could just join them in spirit. This is my first Disney Plus series character. What other shows are there this year? Spider-Man, well, that ship has sailed. Eyes of Wakanda, I'll pass. Ironheart, I get another Iron Man armor? No thanks. Wonder Man? Maybe. So is the X-Men from last year. But that would be insane. 10 characters? This would have to be my best performing video and get tons of people begging me to do it for it to even be possible for me to do something like that. Which probably won't happen. I'm not a wishful man. Between Sonic, Invincible, this, and some other projects I have planned, I'll probably burn myself out anyway. That's all for this tutorial. I hope you found this video helpful in making your own Daredevil. Remember that you're totally free to take your own creative liberties with it, and that my video is merely just to assist you in your own makings. Make sure to send me what you've made if you've made it over on my Instagram, which will be linked in the description below. That's all for the tutorial. Goodbye.